Today I'm going to talk a little bit about McNeil Island. Now, I know that you think, well, that really doesn't have anything to do with USP Marion and you didn't have any contact with it, whatever. Okay. McNeil Island was one of the 3 original penitentiaries. There was United States Penitentiary at Leavenworth, Kansas, Atlanta, Georgia, McNeil Island, Washington, which is, by the way, the state that I'm from, Washington State. Had a lieutenant that did time at McNeil Island, and that's really my only connection to it. He talked about the place. There was a guy named Creepy Carpus, who was one of the old 1930s, Machine Gun Kelly, Mob Barker, shoot 'em up gangster types. And Creepy Carpus on McNeil Island used to drive the school bus for the children of the employees on McNeil Island. And I always thought that was a funny story that he would tell, that this guy named Creepy Carpus was driving the school bus for the kids there. Now, the reason I wanted to even talk about McNeil Island was because there's this concept in state systems that we thought was going to apply to federal inmates, but turned out it didn't. There's a thing called civil commitment of dangerous, aggressive sexual offenders. Now, the first lady to ever be locked up under this concept was sent to McNeil Island, Washington State. She molested like a 2-year-old or less than 2-year-old child, several of them as a matter of fact, but she was only convicted of one, sentenced to 5.5 years. Now, this is how we thought it would work in the federal system as well, but it turned out it didn't. We'll talk about that in a bit. What happened to her was, at the completion of her sentence, she was still deemed to be a danger to the public. So what they did was that they civilly committed her indefinitely. Now remember, she was convicted in 1990, and she served her 5.5-year sentence. So that would have been, somewhere in 1995, 1996, and she would have normally have gotten out of prison at that point, but she was civilly committed and sentenced or sent to McNeil Island. They have some special center there, and it's not run by the Department of Corrections, but by the Washington State Department of Health. And the people that work there are not correctional officers, they're nurses and doctors. And the fence that's all the barbed wire and the razor wire actually around it is a barrier. It's not a fence. And the people that are committed there are not prisoners, they're residents. This is this 1984 newspeak stuff, that George Orwell talked about. If you change the language, you change the thought process behind it. So what they're trying to tell you is that this lady was not incarcerated. She was just a resident in a facility, but it still means you can't leave, and you're locked up, and you got to eat whatever it is that they tell you that you got to eat. So, sounds to me like a prison and a prisoner, but they don't call you convict anymore. So anyway, this McNeil Island, well, the lieutenant that I had that worked there, he was transferring to a new place, and then he was going to retire. And so he had this pot that we were all supposed to put some money into for this party of his, and I didn't put any money into it because A, I was never going to see the guy again, and B, it was like, he's all right. He wasn't the greatest or the worst lieutenant I ever had. He told a few interesting stories about, McNeil Island, and he played the lotto and had these weird theories that went with it and stuff. But I didn't put anything into this kitty. And back in those days, he explained it to me. Hey, look, this could have serious implications for your future promotion. This could have implications for overtime, because the other lieutenants there made the decisions as to who got overtime and who didn't back then. The way it worked was there was no overtime list. It was just, hey, I'm going to call my buddy Officer Jones or Officer Smith and ask him if he wants overtime. They did other things too, like sometimes we would have extra personnel for whatever reason. And rather than just have them do random security checks or something, they would have this little lotto in the lieutenant's office, and the winner of the lotto got to go home. You know, it was like free leave or something like that. So it wasn't the bureau that I know today. You know, now you want overtime, they put you on a list and they have to start at the top of the list and they can't skip anybody. Sick and annual is rotated instead of the same guy gets it all the time because for whatever reason we don't like him, or he's a new guy, whatever. You know, they don't do that sort of thing anymore either. Oh, and by the way, what you're looking at here is rice. This is hundreds of acres of rice behind me here in this little tropical banana republic paradise. So I thought I would talk about this civil commitment, which you may not have heard of. Now, it does not apply to the federal system, and we thought it did when they first passed the law. And so what we were doing was we were documenting all the weirdos that exposed themselves to the staff, and we were busting them for it all the time. And the idea was that we would prove that this guy is an aggressive sexual deviant, and that he should be civilly committed at the end of his federal sentence. We can't. The U.S. Supreme Court said it only applies to the states. It doesn't apply to the feds. So what we have to do then is transfer them to the state for any state crime that they may have to serve time for after they serve time for their federal crime, and hopefully the state could get these people civilly committed to protect you and me, the public, because, you know, some of these sentences are just not nearly long enough to burn out this perversion that some of these people have. I mean, you know, you really want to set the guy loose after 3 or 4 years after he raped some children, you know, but that's the federal law. That's according to the U.S. Supreme Court. Only the states can enforce it, like Washington State does now at McNeil Island. They took it over in the 2000s, I believe, from the feds, or could have been earlier than that, but the state has taken it over. And McNeil Island itself, the place where Creepy Carpus was at, and the Birdman Alcatraz was at the same place before he went to Alcatraz. Didn't do any of his bird research or anything there on McNeil Island, but he was there. So yeah, the place has a long and storied history. It was over 130 years as a federal prison before it was transferred over to the state, and now it's been decommissioned altogether. You still can't go there though. I mean, it's prohibited to the general public, probably because of this special unit for aggressive sexual offenders. And there you go. That's civil commitment. And remember, they're not prisoners, they're residents. And it's not a prison, it's a facility. Same damn thing. And and these places are open-ended. And that lady, the first one that was committed, the first female that was ever committed in Washington State, she got out in 2019. She started her sentence in 1990, and she was finally released to basically house arrest in 2019. Thanks for watching.